The most notable political machine and the biggest one in the country was Tammany Hall in New York City. This is a Democratic political machine run by the Democrats, that's what that means. And the guy that's in charge of this whole thing is Boss Tweed, okay? His name is William Tweed. So after the Civil War, he controlled it and made most of his money from kickbacks, okay? Kickback, again, is whenever you have to pay somebody in order to get a job. You have to pay them a certain percentage of what the value of the job is. So Tweed made $2 for every $1 received by the contractor, between 30 and 200 million in total. Now the reason why we don't know exactly how much is because the guy was a thief and you don't really say how much you've stolen, you know. So one example, okay, the most famous example is the courthouse, and you know it went beyond this. This is just one, okay, but this is the most ridiculous one that we know of. So William Tweed decides that Tammany Hall needs a new courthouse in New York City. So what he decides is the courthouse is going to be a really nice place, okay? He tells a buddy of his that you need to go buy this land because next week we're going to announce that this is the land for the new courthouse. So his buddy goes and buys it and makes a killing whenever the government announces the project, and he gets to sell the land to the government, okay? So anyway, it should have cost $250,000 to build this big, beautiful new courthouse, big brick building. It's still there, by the way. But it actually cost taxpayers $13 million. That's something like 50 times more, if you do the math. Anyway, so $180,000 were paid for 3 tables and 40 chairs. Now, they were nice chairs, nice tables, made out of wood, that kind of thing. But look, y'all, the whole building should have cost $250 grand, and they paid that for 3 tables and 40 chairs, okay? Next, $1.5 million for lighting fixtures. So what is that? 6 times the amount the entire building should have cost? See, what they do is they'll basically say, okay, let's go out and buy, $20,000 worth of light fixtures. Well, it cost $1.5 million. Well, what happens to all that extra money? Tweed gets $2 out of every dollar, out of every 3. And the contractor that was putting in the lighting, he got to keep $1 out of 3. $41,000 for brooms and cleaning supplies, okay? That's a lot. $500,000 for plastering. This is my favorite one, okay? Plastering is basically drywall, okay? So $500,000 to drywall this $250,000 building, okay? And then the guy did a horrible job, reportedly. Basically, William Tweed walks in, and by the way, there was nothing wrong with the job he did. William Tweed walks into the building and said, this is a terrible job. Rip it all down and do it again. So he paid him $1 million to fix the plastering, to do the job twice, okay? And so he gets $13 million roughly for a $250,000 building. And he pumps that money into the political machine to buy votes and to keep the Democratic Party on top in New York City. Well, some people had started noticing, okay? One of them was a young cartoonist named Thomas Nast, okay? Thomas Nast he's probably the most famous political cartoonist in American history. He is the only one that you need to know for the LEAP test, okay? So Thomas Nast starts making these cartoons of William Tweed, okay? You can see Boss Tweed is sitting on a throne of money. He's got the rotunda, which is the top of the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., as a crown, and he has a king's scepter, okay? And this one, it says the brains at the bottom. What's the brains of Tweed? What's on his mind, okay? Got a big old money bag right there. So even if you couldn't read, you could still understand a picture of Boss Tweed sitting on bags of money. You can understand him with a bag of money for a head, okay? So the American public, especially in New York, starts getting really upset and demanding justice. And eventually what happens is Boss Tweed gets arrested and goes to prison for a long, long time, okay? Actually, I think he died in prison. Now, other than bringing Boss Tweed down with political cartoons, Thomas Nast did a few other things that have stayed with America for a while, okay? One thing is he created the modern day Santa Claus. All right. So Saint Nick used to have black hair, and he was not dressed. I don't think he was dressed in red and green. And he was a skinny guy. Thomas Nast is the first one to draw what we call the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. Okay. And also on top of that, he also created the Democratic donkey and the Republican elephant. Okay. So there's two things here. Okay. Why the Republican elephant? Why the Democratic donkey? Well, excuse me. So, the Republicans, ever since they won the Civil War and set the slaves free, for the next 35 years, in every single election, they would say, we won the Civil War. We were the right ones. We were the ones loyal to America. And there's an old saying that elephants never forget. So because they kept bringing up the same stuff over and over, he said that the GOP, or the Grand Old Party, the Republicans, are the elephants. Okay. Now, why a donkey for the Democrats? Well, donkeys are notorious for being very stubborn, just like the Solid South. Okay. If you remember from the Jim Crow chapter, the Solid South, they called it that because they refused absolutely to vote Republican for the next 80 years after Jim Crow, well, after Reconstruction. Okay, they only would vote Democrat. So for the test, okay, you need to know that Boss Tweed got brought down with political cartoons from Thomas Nast. You need to remember that. And you also need to know that the Republicans are the elephants, the Democrats are the donkeys, okay? And you need to know the story behind each one and why they were called that.